I call to order the Waverly City Council for April 24th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed by our city clerk, Carla Geyer?
So moved.
Motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
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 Those with no. Comes our official agenda. We welcome back for meeting number 3 our guest councilperson for the month, Brian Bergen. Brian, you've been participating. We really appreciate any opening words of wisdom for us or any comments you'd like to make.
I've never been good at keeping my mouth shut.
And you're very successful. We appreciate all the work you do at the college and here. At this time, I would welcome any comments by the public on any items not on tonight's agenda.
Good evening, Council.
Good
My
evening,
name's
George.
George Miller in Cooling. We reside in northwest Waverly, and I'm here tonight to request a review of the sign ordinance and/or at least end to the selective enforcement of that ordinance. I am part of the management team. Colleen and other sons manage the Center Hall, which is on 4th Street Southwest, and many times the renters of that facility put up signs for the public events, and in the past year or so, a lot of these signs have been taken down and either thrown on the ground or thrown in a dumpster. The total area of these signs that were removed probably are less than the size of Tarek's sign or Denny's tire sign, and these signs have been up for 6 months to 2 years after the business left town. Ours are usually up less than 2 weeks, and they are diligently taken down and respectfully made. But I was going to go around this week and take some pictures of other temporary signs around town, but there were so many I thought they'd be easy to identify. Some of these were the for sale signs of real estate, for rent, the health fair, hail repair, employment opportunities, insulation installation, plumbing, pancake breakfasts, and so on. I'm not advocating that we take these temporary signs completely out because they serve a certain purpose for the general public as a last-minute reminder of community events. The thing that I'm contesting is the unfair application of the ordinance. I was advised by city staff to tell my renters to not put up any off-premise signs because advertising the center, anyplace else in town on one of these signs is against the ordinance. However, if it had the magical words garage sale on there, it would be okay. And I find that somewhat discriminatory that a garage sale sign can be put up and these, in many cases, professionally done signs advertising these public events at our center are randomly taken down. The easiest solution, as I think we can come up with the current ordinance, is, like I say, put garage sale in the border and just continue to operate like we are. But that to me seems a little bit archaic. As long as the garage sale sign is not in the forbidden triangle at the intersection of streets and alleys and so forth, they could be put any place in town, an exception to being on the parking area. 20 years ago, I was on Chamber of Commerce Committee working with city staff to develop the sign ordinance then. It was not very enforceable then, and it certainly isn't very enforceable today. And I wish the council would show some lenience in the enforcement of this. It would be, I believe, the selective application of the code borders on illegal. As an example, and I can pick on him because he didn't come tonight, if Mayor Purcell went to the police station tomorrow and said, as he came in to all of his officers, I want you to give the drivers of all red cars a ticket if they're speeding, but if they have any other color other than red, to turn your eye and ignore it. That, to me, I think would become an administrative nightmare for the police department and the city council. And I think that same kind of application is happening with the sign ordinance. Tonight with me has come Joanne Stroutman and Sherry Anderson. I'm sorry. They are two of the renters that have had specific experience of these signs being taken down. I don't know if they want to talk or address their specific episodes. I had another of my regular renters come in today who is from out of town and brings in most of her vendors from out of town. And she indicated that most likely if this doesn't get resolved, she's going to take her event out of town because her attendance, she believes, is falling because of the lack of ability to put up these signs. Although this isn't her only method of advertising, it seems to be a significant method of her advertising. And I don't know if you ever go out there on these events. There's flea markets and other things that go on out there, that the parking lot gets pretty congested, and these people are coming from lots of places other than just Waverly. And I think it is a travesty to drive our business out of town.
Thank you, George.
A quick question, if I could.
Yes.
Who is removing the signs?
Our codes enforcement. I don't want to pick on names, but I think you could.
So it is a city official and not a
Yes.
competitor or something like that? Okay.
And as I was going around this last week, I didn't see any other signs. I mean, I'm not picking on the Lions Club. I went to their breakfast. It's not that. But I didn't see any of their signs pulled out and thrown on the ground. I think we're an easy target because we're just one to complain. If they started taking out the Lions Club, throwing them all over town, they'd have a lot more people complaining than just me. And so I think that's why we're the target. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you.
George. Any other comments by the public on anything not on tonight's agenda? George, we will address that. Maybe not right now, but we will address that. No other comments, then study session calendar item number 1 is the topic introduced at last week's public comments by Mike Gaskell. He is concerned about his rental units' access to Wartburg campus, minus the walking bridge over the dry run, which is his question, what can be done. This is just north and just west of Stratman Lumber. Those 4 homes in there are involved. Maybe the city administrator, can you kick this discussion off?
Yes, sir. We're just looking for direction on what council would like staff to do by consensus or to put this on as another topic for an actual vote. But at the time, I know Edie had asked that people kind of go out, see the area before it was formally discussed to see if there was a need to move forward and kind of that at that point. And so that's what we're kind of looking forward is thoughts of council, what you'd like to see. With the estimates, we've tried to look for, sidewalk estimates and some of that. We've got some preliminary rough estimates, but I don't know how much I want to get to that unless there's a need to move forward on this. I know this is one of, I believe, 6 type structures that were removed throughout that corridor. And so the question would then be, if we put one back, how many others do we put back? Is it by complaint? Is it how would we handle this going forward? And that's the only other item I would ask council to consider as they review this topic is how would we police the rest of it then? Putting them 1, 2, 3, all 6, where would we start if we open that up? So.
Mm-hmm. Discussion.
As much as I, kind of sympathize with some of the things that understand what he was saying, I just don't see a compelling need to do anything there. It's, very few residences there. I walk around there myself. I've walked across that area since the bridge has been out. It's dry most of the time. The entrance to his house, you're going to see that. You see the building that he's talking about all the time, whether you're at one end of the street or the other. But I don't think it matters whether you have a walking bridge there to see it or not. I guess I just wouldn't place it in real high priority unless it was a really good price.
Yes.
I
Dan?
tend to agree. I did drive out there too, and it's not a deep, the dry run at that point is not very deep. I need to talk into the microphone because Carla told me.
Carla, the public, Carla put us on notice. You can hear better in public there watching. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm not sure that, even just during wet weather would be the only time where you really wouldn't have access across that. I think it'd dry out pretty.
I'm of same opinion. I don't know that we could justify the expense to do a raised footpath, but maybe something on grade, again, because it is a fairly shallow slope there, more of a sidewalk approach to it. If that would be permissible within that floodway, that'd be about the only option I would feel comfortable with at this time.
You put a sidewalk into that, I'm afraid it would wash out
Yeah.
when you did get water through. So.
The dry run almost serves as a sidewalk, honestly, most of the time.
And we're not sure what the allowed course would be, or if we have to put in footings, say that span of bridge we have is not long enough, would they even allow us to put footings in as a possible impediment to the flow of that water through there, which is why it was removed in the first place. And if that's not long enough, we're looking at building another structure. So there's a lot of investigation we'd have to do before we could move forward with any of this, of course, but it's just a matter of if you want us to go ahead and do that or not. The preliminary estimates, tens of thousands, just because of sidewalk, permitting, possible footings. We just don't know enough right now to say that's our number, but it'd be something we can look into. But it's
Just
kind
not-
of where you think.
I just don't think it's a major, it'd be nice to have, but it's not a major thoroughfare, whether walkway or driving.
It doesn't tie into the trail system at all either, really.
Well, I'd have to say I actually walked that way home today from Wartburg because, of course, Bramer Avenue is closed, so you got to use the rail bridge if you want to get across. And actually, 6th ties in straight into that rail bridge. I mean, if you're going down 6th Avenue, that's exactly where it dead ends into. So it would be a nice route if you're walking to where that street dead end to have a way to get down to 5th. Now, I will say the bridge that used to be there was at the west edge of that Knott Park. I noticed on the east edge there's now a kind of sidewalk, which I believe is meant for drainage, that gets you almost to the edge of the dry run. And if you could find a way to get a bridge at that end, then you would have a whole lot less sidewalk that you'd have to add. I think there are probably more people who would walk along that as a walking path than just the people who live there. You're right, it's not going to be a huge number of people, but I think it's more than just the people who live in those houses would be using it.
Thank you, Brian. Mike?
Well, given the fact that the dry run is actually dry a lot of the time, I think I'd probably agree with what I hear to be sounds like a consensus that maybe this is not a high priority for us to tackle.
Yeah, my question, just looking at it and seeing on the west side there of what used to be 7th Street is, okay, where does Wartburg property, who owns that property on that west side? And is that something that is fully city because it's over the dry run? Or who is that, and whether there's a possibility of sharing some cost in something with that? would be, not knowing the feasibility. I mean, we took the bridge out because we did the dry run. The dry run, I assume most of that is under city control or right of way. So if that's our responsibility, I know, sidewalk on property is the homeowners or the landowner's responsibility, and we've done some of the ADA stuff, but not all of that, so.
Yeah, I think we have a certain amount of ground out. I'm not sure where that stops, and then I think it would be Wartburg property would pick up. at
On the
that point,
west.
On the west.
On the west.
Yeah.
West of Seventh.
Yep.
And honestly, I think a lot of people don't understand this, but, because there are some students who live off campus, but, Wartburg actually has a 4-year on-campus residency requirement. And it's a very small fraction of the students who gain permission to live off campus. And they do rent the houses out, around the perimeter and in, other parts of town as well, but it's not a lot of students. So I'm not sure Wartburg would have, I don't want to speak for Wartburg, I don't know. I mean, we could certainly find out, but I'd be surprised if there was a lot of interest in that.
Carla? Oh, I'm kidding. I'm just,
So based on the consensus then, do we let it sit for a little while, maybe look at it in the next budget possibly, or do you want us to investigate further?
I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on it right now. It might be something that if it is, $10,000-$20,000 and we have excess room in a project that we're doing somewhere that would be tacked on, kind of like we did with the box culvert east of town, that's a possibility, but I'm not going to go necessarily searching for the money right now. And if we have a bridge that fits from one of the ones we took out, but
Okay. We may do some very brief investigation. How about that? And then we'll see what the cost is, and if it's close to where we think it is, we'll probably sit tight. If it's a bit less, then maybe we'll come back to have a actual agenda discussion to put that to a vote potentially.
And then, I would say if we do that, and I understand that's always important when you have citizen input, and there has been some, well, not a Waverly citizen, but an owner. If we do get to that point down the road, I think it would be important to look at the other bridges as well before we start making decisions about one at a time, just because someone brought it to our attention, which is important, but things like what Brian mentioned, connectivity to trails or, all of those kinds of things, as well as neighborhoods or wherever the others are. I think we should look at all of that before we make a decision on any, if we even get to that point.
thank you, council and guest council person, for your wisdom.
Just one other thing. The cost of the bridge is the first thing, and then the upkeep and maintenance of it is the second thing over the years. I don't think Wartburg will be willing to clear it of snow, and then we'll probably be spraying weeds on both sides of it or something like that too. So keep that in mind.
Thank you, Dan. Study session item number 2 is our Economic Development Commission update report. We have Ms. Connie Tolan from our Economic Development Commission here for our update report.
Good evening. I'm Connie Tolan, Economic Development Specialist for the City of Waverly. Deb Schroeder, the chair of our Economic Development Commission, was here in March when this was initially on the agenda for City Council, but unfortunately she's unable to join us this evening due to a scheduling conflict, so I will be delivering the annual Economic Development update this evening. We have 2 primary areas of focus for economic development. The first is support of our existing businesses. This is and always has been our primary focus. Our secondary area of focus is recruitment and development of new business and industry. All programming, initiatives, and activities of the Waverly Economic Development Program support one or both of these focus areas. I've organized these initiatives and activities into 6 various categories, and I want to talk through each of those with you this evening, highlighting 2016 accomplishments and 2017 goals within each of those categories. The categories are our business visit program, regional marketing through the Cedar Valley Regional Partnership, Waverly marketing initiatives, workforce initiatives, housing initiatives, and providing sites for new and expanding businesses and industry. I'll begin with our business visit program. This will be our 4th year that we have participated in the Best of Iowa initiative. In the Best of Iowa, BEST is an acronym for Business Expansion and Strategic Trends. This is a state initiative whereby economic developers in each county are asked to go out and visit their larger employers, and conduct visits and surveys, and we put that information into a software package called Synchronist. The state then goes into that system once a year. They pull all of the data in aggregate, and they use that information to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats throughout the business base throughout the state, and then they use that information in developing their programming. 2 years ago, the Cedar Valley Regional Partnership, which is the regional marketing partnership I participate in, decided to implement our own spin-off program, which we call the Best of Cedar Valley. So we basically take all of the aggregate data from the visits throughout our 6 counties, and we pulled that data, we analyzed it, much as the state did, and we use that information also to help identify trends and areas of focus for us regionally. I will mention that last year, the Best of Cedar Valley program was the recipient of the overall Business Retention and Expansion Award from the Professional Developers of Iowa, and our partnership was presented that award by Governor Branstad at the annual SMART conference in Des Moines. So we see value in both of those programs, and we will continue participation in those in 2017. In addition to what we call our synchronous visits that I just discussed, Bill and I, as well as James, conduct numerous business visits of a less formal nature throughout the community. So, sometimes those visits take place at the business, sometimes it's in our office, sometimes it's after a meeting or during an activity, but we also recognize the importance of those more informal visits and communications, and we will continue those as well throughout 2017. The next area I'd like to discuss is our regional marketing through the Cedar Valley Regional Partnership. The Cedar Valley Regional Partnership is a 6-county marketing partnership that includes the counties of Bremer, Blackhawk, Butler, Buchanan, Grundy, and Chickasaw. This is our 11th year of working together to support existing businesses and market the Cedar Valley region as to new businesses and industry. Our partnership has a budget of approximately $40,000 each year. The funding sources for that include state monies that are awarded through a competitive application process every 2 years, as well as matching funds from the 6 counties that participate. Waverly's annual contribution to that $40,000 budget is $2,337.50. This is a great way to leverage our local marketing dollars to carry out marketing initiatives that we would not be able to do on our own. Some of the things that are included in the marketing plan that is supported by that budget would include site consultant visits in major markets. I believe we're going on our 4th year of conducting those visits, and what it does is it enables us to sit down one-on-one with site location professionals to market to them the Cedar Valley region and the assets that we have to offer for business investment here in the region. It also gives us the opportunity to learn from them what their clients are looking for, and we can utilize that information to make the Cedar Valley more competitive for those types of projects. We will continue that program in 2017. Also, through the partnership in 2016, we have made contact with companies in targeted industries that have plans to expand in the Midwest in the next 3 to 5 years. We have contacted a number of those companies, those that seem like they might be the best potential fit for the Cedar Valley, and we are working to build relationships with them over time we've done some teleconferences. In a couple of the situations, we have actually gone out and met with the company owners at their headquarters, and our goal there is to continue those relationships and hopes that when it comes time for them to choose a location for those projects, that the Cedar Valley will be seriously considered for those. Again, we'll continue to cultivate and develop those relationships through 2017. Also in 2016, we developed a new regional marketing website. Our previous website was 7 years old and badly outdated, so we contracted with Spinutech to build the website, and I would encourage you at your leisure to go out and take a look at www.cedarvalleyregion.com. We also developed a regional job site in 2016. Some counties, such as Waverly, or counties or cities, already had a job site, but some did not. So we utilized our resources to develop a regional site. The regional site resides on the regional website. However, it is iframed into each of the individual counties' websites so that when someone goes on to Waverly's website or Butler County's website or Grundy's, there is a portal there to be able to access that job site. So the benefit to Waverly employers is that there are now 6 different websites in which job seekers throughout the region will be able to see their job postings. And then obviously the benefit is probably even greater for those counties that did not have a job site previously. So we just rolled that out a couple of months ago. So in 2017, our plan is to continue to market that and to drive traffic to that so that we can increase the usership of that investment. In 2017, we're building upon our investment in that new website by implementing a digital marketing program. We will begin with a regional electronic newsletter sent to site consultants and commercial real estate professionals to market the Cedar Valley and to drive traffic to the new regional website. We contracted with Spinutech of Cedar Falls to assist us in this effort, and they'll be able to assist us with measuring results and making adjustments and additions to our strategy as we go forward. And our first newsletter went out today. Well, all these initiatives are very much a regional team effort. I do want to mention that the Waverly team took the lead on managing and coordinating the website, job site, and newsletter projects. And I'd like to publicly thank Paige Yoder, our office manager, for her support. Being our department's website and job site expert, she was incredibly valuable to making these projects a success, and our regional partners also very much appreciate her efforts. The next category is Waverly Marketing Initiative. So while we do a lot of our marketing regionally, we also do that locally through things like utilizing our website and our LOAS system to market existing buildings and sites. We're continually looking for ways to keep the website fresh and relevant, and we have identified some additional content areas that we will be adding in 2017. Our department also prepares a quarterly economic indicators report, and we produce an electronic newsletter sent to targeted audience quarterly. We use that newsletter to share the economic indicators report, as well as to market buildings, sites, jobs, and to drive traffic to the Waverly Economic Development website. We also utilize the City of Waverly Facebook page to market and drive traffic to the website, and we will continue these efforts in 2017. The next category of activity I want to talk about is workforce initiatives. The number one challenge for businesses today is finding qualified workers to fill their job openings. This is not just a Waverly issue, it's not a regional issue, and it's not a state of Iowa issue. It's an issue nationwide in some industry sectors. So in addition to our job board, which we feel is one of our primary ways of supporting workforce for our existing and new businesses, we also participate in a number of local and regional initiatives. A few of those would be the Waverly Area Education Roundtable. That group puts on events such as job fairs, career fairs, workforce exploration events where middle school and high school teachers have the opportunity to go through some of our existing businesses and identify and see for themselves some of the skills needed for future workforce. A recent project that you'll be hearing more about in the upcoming months is the LCAN project. LCAN stands for Local College Access Network. This is an initiative that is funded by the Iowa College Aid Commission. It identifies barriers to students going on to continue their education past high school, whether that be a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, or a certificate program. And through the funding of this program, we are able to, number one, identify the barriers, and number two, identify initiatives to address those barriers. And as I said, you'll be hearing more about that in the next couple of months. Our staff also participates on sector boards through Hawkeye Community College that also addresses the pipeline issue of workforce. We participate in other regional workforce initiatives, and we have some ideas for some new local initiatives that we're going to be exploring in 2017. The next category I'll discuss is housing, and because workforce is an important economic development initiative, housing is an important economic development initiative. Staff and the Economic Development Commission focused much of their time and energy in 2016 on housing, culminating in the development of a housing strategy, which the City Council recently approved. So in 2017, we'll continue to monitor activity in the various categories of housing that were identified in that plan. And if there are areas where that we think need focus, we'll be bringing those forward for consideration. We will also continue to bring forward to City Council proposals for housing projects that require community funding support. We also plan to bring an urban revitalization plan to City Council for consideration and adoption in 2017. So our efforts in housing support both our existing and potential new businesses. The final category I'd like to discuss is providing sites for new and expanding businesses and industry. This will be a strong area of focus in 2017. Both our industrial park and our business park are both at capacity, and we recognize the need to find opportunities to provide project-ready sites for future projects, whether it be expansions of our existing businesses or for future projects. Paige and I put together some quick data from our two existing business parks, and we found that the assessed value of the properties in the two parks totaled $16.9 million, and the businesses in those parks provide 500 jobs. So we believe it is an important strategy to provide sites for continued business growth opportunities, and our goal is for by the end of 2017 to have potential sites identified and to develop a plan for land acquisition and financing to present to the City Council. A review of 2016 wouldn't be complete without discussing our greatest challenge of the year, and that was the closing of the Terex crane manufacturing plant in July 2016. Our department responded to that situation on a number of levels, from assisting impacted workers to finding new job opportunities, to helping to organize a hiring event, to offering our assistance with the marketing of the facility. We are very pleased and grateful to have announced in December that CMI Road Building, Inc. purchased the building. And we are assisting CMI along the way in getting that plant up and operational, and we will continue to assist any way we can throughout 2017. An added bonus of that purchase of the plant by CMI is that Waverly was able to retain the Global Business Services division of Terex, and which provides 100 jobs in accounting and finance. So that very much was a win for Waverly. So in closing, I'd like to say that we could not accomplish all of these things without the guidance and support of the Economic Development Commission. I want to recognize those individuals for the guidance, wisdom, and support that they provide to us as staff, as well as to the Waverly community as a whole. Do you have any questions?
Just a couple. Thanks for your report. First of all, about concerning Terex and CMI. Terex is keeping 100 jobs here. Are they staying on the campus where they were? And if so, how does that impact CMI?
Yes, good question. They're going to be staying in the same building that they have been in, and they have entered into a lease agreement with CMI to lease that building.
How many year lease?
I understand it's a 5-year lease with a renewal provision.
So my other question is, I think about 5 years ago, the then economic development director for the city told me, or told us, that we had around 90 jobs, well-paying jobs, that the city couldn't fill, and various employers around the city. My question is, has that gotten better or worse, and what would cause us to make progress in filling some of those jobs?
When I look at our job site, and the previous director, I think he was referring to the jobs that were posted on our job site. We have fewer than that now. Does that mean there are fewer job openings? I think so. And part of that probably has to do with some of the things that have been happening in the economy. There were a number of John Deere workers laid off in the last couple of years. We had Terex workers that were released into the workforce, and so in some situations, those people were able to fill other positions and jobs. And I think, well, there's always the positive and the negative of that, but I think that probably was a positive outcome, is that it did release some workers into the workforce. Other questions?
CMI obviously is hiring.
They are.
Are they contacting you? Are they successful in attracting a job pool, a work pool?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, just as of Friday, they posted some jobs on our job site. So anyone out there who might be interested in those, it's www.waverlya.com/careers. And like I said, I think there are 3 or 4 job postings out there now, and there will be more coming. They said that there are job seekers who found them and found a way to get resumes and applications to them even before the jobs were posted. So yes, they do have some resumes in hand and are looking forward to receiving more.
Stay there for a second. Any other questions? This is a wonderful report. We know how busy your office is. You guys have really been working hard, and we thank Bill Werger, of course, and you together, a wonderful team. So, but success seems to be everywhere here, and certainly the CMI story is a wonderful story of how a town moves on. So, other questions?
Along that same line, I think it's great to look at successes like CMI, but I know that it takes hundreds and thousands of contacts, and Bill and the group works together to accomplish that. And it'd be great to have 5 or 6 successes like that, but I think the pieces are falling in place with the effort that the whole team is putting together. Economic Development Commission, we kind of polled them a few months ago with some of the new housing in town. We wondered if that was helping fill some of their positions, and most of the employers said no, it's being filled by folks that work here already but want to live here also. So I think that bodes well for the effort we're putting into the housing market, as well as trying to keep current employers happy and filled. So appreciate all the effort.
Thank you.
I think of just speaking for the public here, asking what questions. I think Winnebago would be on people's minds when you give your report, because they had to start with 0 and find a pool of workers. And anything you can share with the public on Winnebago?
Yes, I had contact with them recently, and they reported that they have 77 people employed at their Waverly location, and they have currently no open positions. So fully staffed at 77.
Wow. That wasn't a setup question either. I was listening to your answer very intently. Thank you, Connie.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Study session item number 3 is discussion of the amendment to the urban renewal ordinance. This is our TIF area, tax increment financing, which is for the public an incentive program where you take amounts of new money generated and set it aside. And so to lead this discussion, can I lean on the city administrator again?
Yes, sir. We've kind of touched on a lot of these various pieces of the plan. So I'm going to have Bill Werger kind of do the overall summary of where we are, what the plan will look like with the formal amendment going forward, additions, deletions, and just kind of summarizing some of the things that we've touched on. In fact, just as recent as last week with the Red Fox Inn and the possible renovation there. So if you would take us through that, Bill.
Thank you. The Unified Plan was adopted in 2014. That combined our downtown and our economic development TIF plan area. And then we did an amendment in 2014 to add additional land and projects at that time. when you do a plan, you need to add projects to that plan in order to use those kinds of funds. So periodically, you're going to need to do amendments like we need to do this year. So we're trying to, I'm putting forth a list of what we've got so far as we wait for the Parkway legal descriptions to be created in order to put that in the urban renewal area so we can use some TIF money. Just kind of going just briefly through it, one of the most important things we had to do was under the plan objectives, we have never had this be an LMI housing TIF or urban renewal area. And so we have to change the plan objectives to add that development of LMI housing in order to provide the benefits of the development agreement for the CUNA building. And that will allow us to do other projects if we choose to do that out of those urban renewal funds. The CUNA building was placed in the urban renewal area, but there was not a project that was identified. So that's one of the things that under the plan objectives. Then moving forward with the previously approved renewal projects, we've continued with the airport work, the Economic Development Corporation and Chamber of Commerce funding, downtown redevelopment activities, including new sidewalk signage, planters, benches, street reconstruction, and repair and replacement of aging infrastructure shall continue to be an ongoing project through fiscal year 2020. I reiterated that in this plan because we still need to come back at when the construction is done to complete the signage, the planters, the benches, those kinds of things, and we really want to make sure that that's emphasized. The downtown building renovation incentives project, we want to make that more robust. Once we get the downtown streets looking good, the sidewalks looking good, then we're going to try to do a program to encourage the development of redevelopment of some of those building fronts. And then the general projects are the use of development agreements and to use fees to do planning and engineering for projects, including using attorney's fees when necessary to review the documents that we're doing here. I've done most of the work on these documents, but once we've got them to where we need them, we will refer to our attorneys to help us complete the process to make sure that they look over our documents based on their review of that. Jumping into the projects, the new ones that we have to add, certainly we have to add the Parkway as and it's the east phase of the Parkway. We've had other phases of the Parkway in the urban renewal plan, so we need to add that. So that's one of the public improvement. The next one would be a development agreement with the CUNA building, which we have described because we already have those terms agreed. The CMI road building was expected to be used. We're not sure if we will use that or not, but we still would like to put it in there because we just feel like in the next 2 to 3 years, there may be a point where there may be some assistance we can provide to further build out and bring more employees to that structure. And so we don't want to have to go back and amend it later on. Putting a project in does not mean that you have to do the project. But it has to be in the plan in order to do that project. So we can not do a project even if it's in there. The one that I didn't get in here because I had prepared this a month ago was the Red Fox Development Agreement terms that we had, that the City Council had approved recently. And we will add another subparagraph for a pending development agreement for the Red Fox redevelopment. And then that catch-all development agreement paragraph still provides us the ability to do development agreements using that catch-all, although mostly we like to have those identified in the plan. And again, with the planning and engineering fees. The projects that we're going to add then also include the Parkway, the new main that we're going to put on First Street Southeast from Bremer to about 3rd Avenue in order to provide a water main for fire suppression for the former CUNA building. It's good timing. We plan to do that in August, and we'll do it after we've opened up Bremer Avenue. and then we'll have it ready for using First Street by next year when we do the rest of the project on the east side. We are looking at the potential for an upgrade of 20th Street between 10th Avenue Southwest and probably as far as the Waverly Shell Rock School, although there's no plan for that. We just want to make it clear that when the Meyer-Hansen property, if that's developed, that's south of the Red Fox. And then you look at the Robertson and Bry property to the east of the Red Fox. When that develops, 20th will have to be upgraded at some point and in some configuration. And we just wanted to make sure that was a project that's already in the plan for future years. We need to do an extension of a sanitary sewer main off of our main on 4th Street in order to provide service for development of the golf club addition, the old driving range, and to open up for servicing properties along 4th Street that would have additional development on their property. So if Quickstar expanded or if Denny's expanded his lot, he's building the strip mall right now, but there's room on that lot to build more, and that would be able to be service all of that. That's the best, most efficient way to get sewer service to that development property on that Outlot A by bringing it to 4th Street and taking it that direction instead of going through the other direction through residential areas. That's pretty much what we've got so far. I mean, the rest of it's just things we have to do. We do have to add some of the properties because we have to add the Red Fox Inn. When we did this amendment back in 2014, we added the Meyer-Hansen property to the south of it, but we didn't add the Red Fox. So now we need to add that property. We would like to add the CMI property because that's a property that could be used, could be benefited later, and if we're going to benefit a property, we'd like to capture the increment. And then we are developing the legals to be used for the Parkway East Division, and we'll identify those as they complete surveying of the right-of-way. We're taking a couple of properties out of the area, and that's because development really didn't occur during the 20 years that they've been in. There's the property around Walmart, including the Walker property and the Tri-B Limited property. The Walker property's been in for 20 years, and we couldn't capture increment anyway. So by removing it, and if there's ever any project in the future, it could be put back in. So right now, we're just basically taking it out. The Tri-B has kind of a mixture because it's actually in two pieces. One's a 2005 and one's a 1999 piece. And again, the same issue is that we don't really have a project now, so part of it's expiring, part of it's going to expire fairly soon. So we just rather take it out and put it back in if we ever need to do it when it's actually developed. And then there's one parcel that's on the far north edge of the South Industrial Park, or the South Business Park, which is next to the golf course. That's about a 3-acre parcel. That again, that's been in there long enough that we wouldn't capture an increment. So if we really wanted to capture an increment to give people incentives, we'd have to put it back in, and we'd rather do that when we're ready to develop that property.
So is it true that the other ones that you mentioned, besides this last one, they all are sunsetting as well?
The Walker property was put in, and it's obviously in the same condition it was for the last 20 years. And the Tri-B, the other one would be sunsetting also, that 3-acre parcel. So we couldn't really capture much increment if we did sell it to a company to develop. We wouldn't really have any money to give to them from their own property, and we usually like to capture their increment to give them incentives as opposed to giving them incentives from other increment that we capture. And keep in mind, we certify what we need from when we use TIF. We don't collect it all. If we don't need it, we identify which parts we need, and we use it for those incentives that we have going, and we return the rest back. So we are not taking unneeded for projects that we don't have going. So we think we do that very efficiently in Waverly and can return some of that money back to the other taxing authorities.
Can you clarify for me, as far as the legalese side of it, if something's sunsetting, isn't it already out? Why do we have to take it out?
It's actually not out. It actually,
How does that
because
technically work?
the way it works is, when you think of the urban renewal area, you can put property in an urban renewal area and it stays there until you take it out, which means you can use money from tax increment financing in any area within the urban renewal, even if it's sunsetted. The sunset is that period of time in which you're allowed to capture increment. So it's still in the urban renewal area, and you can still spend money on it. You just can't capture any increment anymore. What we're doing in those areas that we're taking out is basically saying, well, they put it in there, but they really didn't have they didn't really capture anything over any time period. And so we'd rather wait until it maybe gets redeveloped in the future, if it does get redeveloped, and then put it back in at that time and capture more increment at that time.
Does that leave us with like pockets that we're pulling out so that it's not a unified district, or do we
No.
still?
We're just taking parcels out. I mean, when you look at the colored map, you just put a white spot over the one you're taking out. It still works.
Because I seem to remember we had to at one point have it like going down
Contiguous?
the street, and so it was contiguous. And the street was in, but not necessarily.
No. No, we can do this.
Okay. It
Yep.
seems odd when you say something's going to sunset. That usually that means it's
That's
gone.
and that's interesting because that's the other part of it, because you can have it in there and you're not capturing any increment. So airport property, that whole area north of the industrial park, we have a lot of land within the urban renewal area, but we're not capturing any increment. And we're not certifying it. Until we certify it, we don't capture increment.
Bill, you made a couple references to the Meyer-Hanson area, or is it Hanson-Meyer?
Meyer-Hanson.
Okay. Yeah, are there any specific plans for that space?
No, not that we've heard of, no. I mean, it's one of those places that it's bound. I mean, that whole area is just kind of that now, this big infill area that potentially could develop as other areas are filling in. Looking back in retrospect, I was just coming into the job and didn't really understand that we probably shouldn't have put it in at that point, because it wasn't anything of interest at that time. And so but it maybe is an incentive to say it's in there, so if you want to develop it, we have the ability to give some incentives. So, but I think with the Red Fox, we need to put that in there so we can spend money on incentives.
If I remember correctly, for the budget that we just put together, we had released about $20 million back into the general fund, with taking some more out and putting different pieces in. Is it going to be somewhat of a wash there, or?
I don't think we're putting in anywhere close to 20 million, so.
Disregard that.
Okay.
Of the few that you're
Yeah,
identified
okay.
taking out and the few that you're going to put in, is that going to be somewhat of a wash, or will we?
No, we're probably putting more in than we're taking out. Because if you think the value of those three parcels that we're taking out wouldn't be equal to the CMI property, and then the Parkway, that's going to be a difficult one to measure because that's kind of such incremental. I mean, I think the Mackey property was like 180, and whatever we have to pay for the rest of the right. Although that doesn't capture any increment anyways. It doesn't matter. It's just putting it in.
I don't think we'll
And it
see
would be-
much of a change in the next year, but our hope would be in years to come, if the Red Fox goes as we hope and the Parkway gets done, you start to see some building there, then you would see the noticeable increase. But right now, nothing was really generating increment from what we took out, and so far we don't have a lot of increment to generate in the next year with what we're putting in. So we think it'll wash for the most part, but in a year or two or three, we would hope CMI, Red Fox, some of that would start to take off and then generate more, as the intent is. So, but yeah, in the next year, I don't see much of a change right now. Just prepping for years to come.
We felt like putting CMI in at this point has them, if we capture some increments, some of that can be used towards the new Parkway that will actually benefit the east side industries quite a bit. And we think that's just kind of their share of that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as your suggestions or what you're taking out and putting in, that all makes sense. And just kind of wondering would it start affecting the bottom line in the budget? And
Any more discussion? Any direction we're giving to the
Well-
administrator?
We'll hopefully have it finalized when we get the descriptions for the parkway. That's really the only thing we're waiting on and we're expecting that in May, I think in May or maybe first part of June, so we can get that. And then we'll start that whole process of the things that we have to go through to amend the urban renewal area.
maybe a reminder, is the Kroll Ready Mix property already in the urban renewal? Or I know we've talked about that one off and on, and
I think part of it is, I was trying to remember that, and it may be in a district that doesn't sunset, part of that, because the railroad area was put in, and I think maybe some of it was at that time. There's a kind of a swath across. I would say if it isn't, if it all isn't, and I don't think all of it is, we would obviously have to amend if we did anything with them in the future.
thinking of that property and then the property around Stratman's and that, kind of being all in that same area, if we could help those property owners improve the appearance of the buildings, those type of things.
We could try to use other revitalization type programs too, so we're looking at that when we can.
And what, oh, never mind.
Want the last word, E?
No, I was going in a different direction.
Study session item number 4 is a discussion of the integrated roadside vegetation management plan, which is, to set the table, is quite an ambitious plan. We thank Tab for his work. Any lead-ins before we lean on Tab from City Administrator?
Just that this is kind of a rare plan in a sense. How many cities currently have this tab?
We'd be the fourth.
The fourth in the state, so we're kind of getting a jump on trying to start a plan to get into the roadside vegetation management. I think this tab will demonstrate there is kind of a need for it, and as we've acquired more properties to maintain, this is something that will blend into that as a city, so we'll go ahead and look at the presentation. I think you'll be impressed in what it can do for us and kind of the reasoning behind it, so.
Iowa City and Cedar Falls and Center Point have a plan on file with the state. We have to stay up with Center Point, I'd say. This is not a new concept at all, but it's new for us in Waverly, a integrated roadside vegetation management plan. We're going to introduce it. There's several definitions, some goals of it, how it's going to operate, and how involvement will be part of it. You have to make sure people know what you're doing, and maybe teach a little bit as you go along. What is vegetation management? And again, this is the roadside part of it, because when it's at the county level, that's what their concerns are. Provide alternative to conventional roadside management practices like extensive use of mowing. That's conventional herbicides, which are costly and to implement and often ineffective. Instead of that, you use native and other beneficial vegetation, and about 50,000 acres in the state right now are under the plan. Why integrate roadside vegetation management? It's a DOT program that practically every county now has. Having a plan on file makes the government entity eligible for Living Roadway Trust Fund grant that funds planting projects as well as equipment. There's very grants that fund equipment, and that's something that'd be very valuable, I think, for maintaining roadsides. Actual definition is use of native and other select types of vegetation with appropriate management techniques to produce a cost-effective, environmental sound management alternative for roadsides. Our thought is roadsides per definition, but also municipal applications such as prairies, no-mows, spraying, forestry, weeds, trails, and then inventory and document those areas. Parks Division would be able to concentrate on maintained areas, ball diamonds, sports facilities, and playgrounds and parks. Public Services would be able to concentrate more on what their core core responsibilities are, and that's streets and solid waste. This is a chart I had at the budget, a little bit of history before 85, from 86 to 07 and 08 to 2017, that we've had the same number of grounds maintenance folks for these 35 years or whatever, and we've increased acreages by 83% and went from 0 to 14.4 miles of trails and from 6 to 14 buildings. So there just is a lot more for us to do. A couple years ago, we got together and put a map together on all the areas we maintain in terms of grounds maintenance. It's on the slide, but it's also behind the guest council member if you want to turn around, and there's lots and lots of dots there, and we touch all those areas at least once a year. So it's not a small type of operation. Who's involved? Individuals. We had a interest meeting at the very beginning that we had some individuals come in. Organizations, we were there. Bremer County Vegetation Management, they've got a full-time person on board already. Trees Forever was there. Wartburg College, a biology professor, and the sustainability person from Wartburg College was there, plus an intern. ISU Bremer County Extension, and we had a state person that was integrated, the Living Roadway Trust Fund person come up for it and kind of guide us through the process. The state gives you a whole outline of how to put this together, and it's not that simple, but it's very good to follow. So that's who was involved at the beginning. We had 2 or 3 meetings. Goals are to save money, save time, and preserve the local environment. How does it work? You keep inventories of all the different locations, vegetations, all that. Right now, we don't have that. The only inventory we really have is a tree inventory. Tools be used. The trees are on the GIS system, but you can put everything else on a GIS system too. Many of the concepts are consistent from the county, which concentrates on roadsides, to the city that concentrates on all these different areas. Operations in the plan that we gave you, which is version 3 of it, we're on version 4 already because we've already had some changes, some additions, and some typos that we found. It has a monthly calendar of things that we would do, and then has a non-monthly calendar of non-annual type things. For instance, you don't trim your small trees every year. You trim them in the first year, in the third year, and the 7th year type thing. So it's those types of things. General methods and an inventory of equipment that we share right now. Right now, this work tries to get done using a combination of equipment from parks or leisure services and public services. And what we would do is dedicate some equipment to this effort, and then still borrow stuff when we need it. What's it look like? Native plantings along roadsides and trails, less mowing or no mowing in some cases, reduced and selective pesticide use, one-stop shop for street right-of-way, trail, and public property tree maintenance. I'll give you an example. Right now they call City Hall, they call Leisure Services, they call Public Services, they call directly to the parks if there's a tree down or something like that. I get texts on my phone about a tree on a trail, which is fine, I love it, but then this would be a one-stop shop if this were to happen. How can we inform the people? We're outside here in the lobby. We put in a bulletin board of IRVM, has some basic information on what it does, what it looks like, and how to get more information. Public involvement, I'm not going to read all this, but like I said, there's an educational component of this where we would educate and outreach and partner with ISU Extension and Bremer County. Communication protocols will be pretty much the same, if not extended, what we do with other things like news releases, talk to service clubs, website, all those types of things that we already do. It's required in the resolution of support to the state that a advisory board is named. I suggest a Leisure Services Commission be doubled up as the advisory board. That's where most of the issues come anyway, and then they would cover those types of things. Then the collaboration with Bremer County, I think there's a lot of potential there because they have some equipment we have equipment they don't have, and there could be some joint things on the very edges of town that we could work jointly on. And then the tree specials that we have for Trees Forever every year. What's the Living Roadway Trust Fund? That's the grant program that you are eligible if you become this designation. And again, it is a project grant as well as a potential equipment grant. We've got a couple ideas right now of some projects. We also have some ideas of equipment. And it is funded by the REAP, Resource Enhancement and Protection, which is a good and solid environmental program that we've gotten several grants for, and it's also funded by lottery money, so the funding's still there all the time, we hope. Next step, we have submitted a plan version 4 to the DOT. We have to finalize and apply for a Living Roadway Trust Fund grant. It's not due until June. We have to do some education outreach and publicity on the IRVM plan. Hopefully we can do the service club circuit and get some news articles out there so that we can let people know what all it is. The commission has already made a recommendation of support to the of a resolution statement of support to approve that at last Thursday night's meeting. And then the plan is to bring the resolution of support to the council on May 15th. Then we got some nice pictures of stuff.
Wow.
Obviously, wildflowers and grasses have deep root systems, so they're more substantial and they promote drainage and less compaction and all those types of things. And if you want to find out more, that's the website.
So Tab, you're talking about roadside, obviously not talking about city streets. How many miles of roadside are we talking about? We're talking about inside the city limits, right?
Well, we're not talking just roadsides. That's what the counties do. We're talking about becoming roadside certified, you might say, but add those types of activities to some of our non-maintained area, you might say, the NOMOs, the trails, those types of areas. So we would have the concepts of the roadside management be put into a vegetation management type situation for the community.
Would that include retention ponds and those types of things?
Yes, retention, detention, absolutely.
What about parks?
Parks would still, those are maintained areas. So unless there's a NOMO, and there's a couple of NOMOs in the parks, the maintained areas would stay with the park system, the Parks Division.
Like the area of Greenfield down by the river, that area that's the NOMO, that would be.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what.
The area by Greenfield down by the
Yes.
river there, that would be a NOMO area that would.
Right. But we could get a grant to get actual aquatic type plants for there rather than the stuff that just comes up. We've planned that before, and you know, every time it floods, there's new seeds that are introduced.
For the area in the, I forget the name of the addition out east of town that has that water flowing through about a block of the backyards.
Right, Eastgate or Rolling Hills.
Rolling Hills, I think. I'm
Right.
thinking of.
Yeah, we struggle with that one every year with weeds on one end or the other, and we get a complaint, we go out and try to deal with it. A lot of times it's too late.
When I first saw some information on this, and then saw that it's going to be staffing neutral, that kind of surprised me, I guess. If we haven't been able to allocate resources to take care of these places, can we really do it on a staffing neutral basis just by re-identifying or renaming what tasks people are going to do from a day-to-day basis, those type of things? And especially with the slide where you show the amount of responsibility that you've gained over the last 20, 30 years and having increased staff. That always concerns me, I guess, is
I don't know if that's quite right. I think would be one more full-time person, and then there'd be a moving of a full-time person over, and then parks, cemetery, public services, some of their seasonal hours would be combined. That all would be neutral, but it's probably another full-time person. They got to kind of be pretty specialized.
Just the quick reaction, having been through the Trees Forever presentations, Des Moines, and being brought up to date again on where we're at and the ecosystem and the whole need for us to do prairie growth from trees to grasses, what this does for including our bird population, which is often threatened, seems to me hugely important work. And thank you for being a leader. Other thoughts? Let's make this one happen.
We'll see you on May 15th.
Study session item number 5 is a discussion of invocations at the city council meetings. Tim, did you want to lead off? I'm prepared also to weigh in here some, and others are.
Yeah, it was brought up to us, and I just think it's been brought in public comments, which we're not usually, the practice is not to respond at that time with it. So this just seemed like the appropriate time to bring it up and at least have a council discussion about our practice with that and where we go with it and the thoughts the council has towards it. I guess prior to getting on the council, the handful of council's meetings I attended, I don't recall there being prayers with Ike or not. Never. Okay. Yeah, so it didn't jump out at me. I don't even remember if we did the pledge prior either. So both of those items kind of came on. I came on with Mayor Brunkhorst at the same time. He was elected, and those both came onto the agenda, and we're just like, okay, that's what we do. And I had, hadn't put too much thought into it in terms of dispersal, other than at the point that Councilmember Borum became sick and was gone quite a bit, and then passed, unfortunately, and Mayor Brunkhorst asked me to step in as Mayor Pro Tem. And one of the things that he kind of asked me was that part of that was, he said Gary had done a lot of the contacting of ministers from around the community to do that, which was okay, news to me. Then we elected a former pastor, so that made my job a little easier. As far as that, I guess I kind of liked the idea of rotating it around the community. That Gary had done, bringing in different pastors from the different organizations. Hadn't really heard anything about others from around the community that from different faiths or different backgrounds would have wanted to provide an invocation. And I guess I don't really have an objection to that at all. But figured bring it out for council to discuss and see.
Very good. Thank you very much, Tim. Any thoughts? I have some legal reflections from at the appropriate time, I can bring in too, but it'd be nice to have a little lead-in input.
I mean, I think another thing to consider is, or at least ask the question, why we pray at all, and I don't want that to sound bad, but, you know, prayer is often a very private thing for many people. For some, it's more public. We have a precedent of not praying before meetings. I mean, it's not like we've always prayed, so that would be another consideration, I guess.
Well,
I guess. I spent a lot of time at Ike's meetings, and not having it, I guess I never questioned that. When Mayor Brunkhorst brought it back, just the whole separation of church and state, I always kind of questioned, was it appropriate to be part of our meeting? For that reason, as well as the different denominations that are out there, the different approaches that people have towards religion or not religious, those type of things, it seemed like a gray area that we were kind of stepping back into. I do feel with the direction that our current mayor has taken it to be less denominational maybe. It's great to have rotate it between the different congregations in town, but there's still that flavor in the background where I think the mayor tries to hit a non-church prayer, if there's a simple way to put it. He often speaks for all in the community. To me, they're more invocations than prayers, so I've learned to become more comfortable with it than I was under Mayor Brunkhorst, but I know CUNA Mutual is going through a very focused 2 or 3 year process of being more inclusive and doing a lot of training on inclusion and those type of things, bringing in different nationalities, different religions, those type of things. So I see this as probably one of the few items the mayor gets to decide on. And I guess I would leave it up to the mayor, but also be comfortable if it was opened up to a larger audience to be involved in.
Dan?
I guess I'd be comfortable with, opening it up to other denominations. I think I would ask that, if we didn't reach out to someone, if someone came forward, that they have someone that is a citizen of Waverly sponsor them. And, rather than just random people from anywhere, if they had someone that lived in Waverly that they have contact with, that they could, use as a reference or say, okay, here we are, brought to you by this person, who is also a citizen. I would be comfortable with that.
Mike?
I have to say I am not comfortable with prayers in public events. I think it's really inappropriate. I think prayer belongs in our homes. It belongs in sacred spaces. I've had a long-standing issue with having baccalaureate in a public high school, and I know that some communities have responded to that by moving them into churches, which was the right thing to do, I would say. If you want to open a meeting with a moment of silence, I'd be really fine with that. But aside from the fact that we open ourselves up to some unpleasant challenges, which I think are understandable, I just am not comfortable doing it. I think it's an inappropriate use of something, a practice that really belongs to people of faith, and they should practice it where their faith is focused. So that's where I am.
I talked to Attorney Brett Hardy from the Defense Fund Alliance, who was part of the team arguing before this United States Supreme Court on these very issues, and he also advises towns across the country. There are 3 things prayers cannot do, according to Mr. Hardy. They cannot preach conversion, they cannot preach damnation, and they cannot disparage non-believers. Also, in the discussion, he said they cannot force an audience to participate. Prayers other than that are nationwide permitted, just so we know the legality. And he added, well-established and totally constitutional. There are 2 court cases that are relevant here. He said the first is Marsh versus Chambers in 1983, which found the practice of prayer before public meetings to be totally constitutional and anchored in the United States history from its very beginning, in fact, before the formation of a constitution. The second is the Greece versus Galloway decision in 2014, which also affirms the practice, albeit with these 3 above stipulations. Again, this is the case that Attorney Hardy helped argue before the Supreme Court. He said that, to summarize, that the practice of invocations before public events is the law of the land. And that what we are doing here now, whether we want to continue that or not is another thing, but it's totally constitutional. So that's a little background. Bill, do you want to weigh in a little bit? That was just my 3 cents. Or not? I get that look, folks.
Well, you know, whenever a lawyer looks at a Supreme Court decision that has about 3 lines of how the decision was delivered, which means 3 people agreed on this part, and 2 people agreed on this part, and 3 people disagreed on this part, it becomes hard to really define what the true meaning was of the case. And in this case, the prayer was upheld, which means anything that was included within that decision is what we call dicta, which is persuasive, but it isn't the law of the case, because the law of the case found that what they were doing was appropriate. So you have to look at their words and what they said to determine what's not appropriate. You know, there's some language in there that causes me some concern. You know, you talked about the 3 things that they talk about: proselytize, not being denigrating other religions. It says, finally, so long as the town maintains a policy of non-discrimination, the Constitution does not require it to search beyond its borders for non-Christian prayer givers in an effort to achieve religious balancing. But then, of course, that's 3 people that agreed with that ruling. And so it seemed to give us all something to look at and to maybe support what we personally feel about what this practice does. And so, in some ways, I think everybody can find their what they can think is backing their position to some extent. So it really comes down to, again, trying to find a way that the consensus wants to move forward and doing it in a non-discriminatory manner.
I think Mike articulated much better what I was trying to say, so I don't have a strong feeling I can live with almost anything that's not discriminatory, but I guess if you were to ask me my preference, it would be not to pray here.
I guess I really don't have a problem with the kind of invocation and asking for guidance or asking for, hoping for collective wisdom to kind of descend on all of us, however form that may be, where you may think it comes from, or it's the group and kind of that. Whether it's a prayer or invocation or that, I think most organized civilizations have focused around some kind of guiding principles that are emanate from something. So looking for kind of that, stroke of genius, or what it comes from, or how it comes about for us. It's it's one of those when I think about, okay, I've had people say, well, it should be from the community. Yes, but I know I don't believe there are any mosques in Waverly. I don't think there are any synagogues. I do know that Waterloo Cedar Falls has both. And I know there are people of both the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith in the city. So those certainly would, not be represented if we only stayed within, city, and the idea of a sponsorship within that is possible too. So I don't know, from a historical standpoint, it seems like it's something that's been done, at least in the United States, as far back as, some of the earliest foundings of the United States were based on principles. The Declaration of Independence refers to a creator, and so it's kind of, yes, I understand, outright prayer and fire and brimstone or anything like that it seems over the top, but a concept of guidance or collective wisdom doesn't, to me.
Well, I figure I can chime in.
Yes.
Let's see, I very much agree with the way Dan described it as getting community members to sponsor religious leaders when we don't have that representation within Waverly. I personally do like the opportunity to showcase the diversity of opinions and backgrounds present within Waverly. So the invocation is a wonderful opportunity to do that. I personally feel much more comfortable when it comes from that microphone of the public input than coming from one of these microphones here. So just my personal preference is I would love to have community members or religious leaders sponsored by community members, or other free thinkers sponsored by community members giving us that invocation, but I would feel much more comfortable with it coming from the public speaking podium rather than this part of the desk. But I do think it's a nice idea to just showcase some of the diversity in our community.
Thank you. The discussion has come to a conclusion. Are there any, we have boards and commissions that have done reports. We have our monthly financials. Any comments? Officially received the Airport Commission minutes from March 9th. Comments? Officially received Leisure Services Commission minutes from March 16th. Comments? Officially received Bremer Waverly Law Board minutes from April 10th. Officially received staff comments.
I don't think we have any, sir. Not that I'm seeing. I think we're good.
All right. City Council comments? Edith?
I don't have any, thank you.
Councilman Lampe? Kim?
Just next week we've got several public hearings for various items, so the public's kind of aware of that and a heads up way.
Mr. Michael? Dan?
Maybe a question for Bill or James. Have we had any contact at all with the owners of the church property that burned here a few months ago? Do they have a plan to remove the debris and get the sidewalks opened up, those type of things?
We have had ongoing discussions recently with getting that moved along. We wanted to make sure their investigation was completed, and it's been confirmed that they are. And so we're going to move forward with asking that we set a short time period for them to get this resolved, or we're going to take steps to do it as a nuisance.
I've just had a few people from the public kind of ask me when the sidewalk's going to be opened up, and with school being close to being let out and those type of things, to get the hole filled in and the junk moved off the lot.
And they need to get into they need to bring back the water service and the sewer service and things, so that's going to take getting into the street. So we're kind of looking at that aspect of it too. So we're moving on it right now as we speak. We're going to be doing some notices on that. Good.
Ryan?
Well, sure. I should give a shout out to a relatively new social group, a board game club that has been founded in Waverly called the Friendly Meeple. And this group meets a couple times a week. They've got events at the library. I know they've recently rented a space at the complex. And this Saturday is International Tabletop Board Game Day. So it's a great way to get out with your family and do some family-friendly activities. They often have board game days at the library on certain Saturday afternoons. But if it's the sort of thing that sounds like fun, I'd encourage you to find out more at, I believe it's friendlymeeple.com, which is their website. So find out more about it.
Wow. Sounds interesting.
Meeple is Meeple.
So if I want to participate, do I have to bring my own board game?
They have plenty of board games and plenty of people who would love to teach you how to play board games. And all the new and latest board games that you've never heard of before.
Not Candyland, Mike.
Good. Life is not all about television.
So you're saying you wouldn't be bored?
Ouch. Which moves us directly into the mayor's comments. Just to the public on how well we're doing on supporting our local businesses. I think we're doing very, very well. I think we all had confidence that that would take place and that we would continue to support and wouldn't taper off in our shopping locally. Ladies' Night Out was last Thursday, and it was overwhelming success, and just lots of people and all the businesses, and it's inconvenient a little bit, but not impossible. And so we need to applaud the Waverly community for its support of our businesses, and we have a little bit longer to go here. This is going to keep going on and on and on. So thank you, public, and keep up the good work. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn?
Second, please. Second. Motion second. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. Adjourned.